Hello, and welcome to my final book review of 2023. And today, I want to talk to you about The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew. Another young adult title, because, you got to make it easy for the end of the year. But this one is one I actually enjoyed a lot more than the last one. The last one I did was Only a Monster by Vanessa Len. I thought it was all right. I mean, it was decent, but it didn't wow me, and I had a lot of issues with some of the tropes in it. But The Whispering Dark is definitely more my speed. This is a young adult horror novel. It's definitely leaning more into the young adult still, but there's a lot more horror elements in this, which is my kind of book. Here's a little card that came with it. This is the OwlCrate Edition. This is the original dust jacket. If you would go by the trade edition, this is what you're looking for. OwlCrate did have its own exclusive dust jacket featuring this rib cage, featuring part of the rib cage broken off because a bone shard takes is pretty prominent throughout the novel. Of course, you got your young adult tropes such as he was a paper moth in the dark and she was a light. And just like all young adult novels, you got to have an illustration of the characters on somewhere in it. That's just kind of, it's a requirement. So there it is. There's Colton and Delaney, the main characters. First of all, Kelly Andrew, the author, this is her debut. She is deaf. She lost her hearing when she was 4 years old, which actually plays into the character Delaney, the main character, who has also lost her hearing from a young age. She uses a cochlear implant. There's also, unrelated to the character, there's stamping on the cover here, Malus Novis and Mon Omnis Moriar, some Latin phrases that appear within the novel. Anyways, back to the novel proper. Delaney is the protagonist. She has lost her hearing at a young age. She's getting by with a cochlear implant, and she is accepted into Godbowl Academy, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is an academy of like arcane sciences. It's really weird because this world is like the real world. There's no real. There are definitely fantasy elements to this novel. There is jumping between dimensions. There are spirits. There are creatures in the darkness that you can catch out of the corner of your eye. But like the rest of the world outside of this academy is very down to earth. It's like the real world, and they're just totally fine with having this well-established academy that everyone is aware of, where the main purpose of the academy is to jump between dimensions, which is it's just I don't know, that's kind of my only weird takeaway from the novel. So Delaney witnessed a boy almost come back from the dead when she was younger. And wouldn't you know, her chapters are intercut with chapters of Colton Price. Colton Price is a character who, when he was a boy, died. He drowned when he was a boy, but suddenly he found himself alive again several weeks later at the feet of Delaney, the other protagonist. And wouldn't you know, both of these characters, these star-crossed lovers, find themselves at the Godbowl Academy, which is, like I said, the arcane academy where she's going to learn how to jump between dimensions. And Delaney has an issue with shadows. She doesn't like darkness. She constantly sees shadows moving out of the corner of her eye, and wouldn't you know, it turns out some shadows are actually moving. There are some sinister things going on in Godbowl Academy. There is almost like a little suicide club going on of students who have their own job, and students are turning up dead. And it's up to Delaney to try to solve these instances and solve these, I don't want to say murders, solve these deaths. Colton Price, who's like the teacher's assistant, he's a TA. He has strict orders to stay away from Delaney, but he can't help himself. He finds himself drawn to Delaney because it wouldn't be a young adult novel if you didn't have romance jammed down your throat. It wasn't too bad. I am definitely not a romance reader, and I'm definitely not particularly a young adult reader either. But it was an enjoyable story. It was surprisingly dark for a young adult novel. It doesn't shy away from death. It doesn't shy away from. I don't want to say it's too gruesome, but there are slight descriptions here and there of bodies pulling themselves back together, and there's some freaky spirits out there, and there are some dark corners that are going to cause some nightmares for some of the younger readers. Yeah, this is almost like, an introduction into horror. It's your doorway into horror. And for that, I actually commend it. I mean, I do have to criticize the fact that one of the only reasons this novel takes as long as it does, almost 400 pages, is that some characters are stupidly vague. I mean, that's not necessarily a young adult thing. That happens in all sorts of novels. It happens in all sorts of movies where if characters would just communicate, what the hell has happened to my camera there? That was weird. I didn't touch the uh, camera stand at all, but I flicked my hand, and as if using the force, the entire camera wobbled. That was weird. Anyways, you have characters who they don't necessarily speak in riddles, but they don't answer the questions or provide all the information to questions that they could provide. And it would be a significantly shorter novel if they did do that. There are characters who clearly have answers that they don't want to provide other characters, and I mean, it's for your own benefit that they don't provide these answers, or else, like you said, you'd be reading a short story or a novella. But at the same time, there's only so many times you can ask the same character for an answer and you get the same vague or nondescript answer back, where you're like, you don't want to bang your head on a wall and be like, oh my God, you are frustratingly vague or frustratingly unhelpful. But it all works out in the end, kind of. I'm not saying spoiling the ending or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, you're eventually gonna get around those roadblocks of obscurity. It's bound to happen. A lot of Greek themes throughout the Whispering Dark. I mean, it's very much. It's not inspired by the Tale of Orpheus, but I mean, it does have a lot of using the Tale of Orpheus as a theme, for example. But I mean, it was decent. I there were times where I was reading it and I'm like, well, if Delaney doesn't have her cochlear implants turned down right now, how is she understanding what's going on around her? And I'm like, is that believable? But I feel like I'm not the one to say, and I feel like it must be believable because, as I said, Kelly Andrew is also deaf. So if there's somebody out there who's going to know what it's like or what is possible or what is able for a deaf character, it's going to be Kelly Andrew. And for that, I have to commend her. It's one of those things where you want to be the change you want to see in the world, and Kelly Andrew like took that to heart. She said, "You know what? I don't see enough representation for deaf main characters, deaf or hard of hearing main characters." So she went out and she wrote a novel about it, and it works well. It's, I mean, as a novel, as a debut, it was incredibly impressive. Like I said, it's. I don't read too many young adult novels. This is probably the second one I've read this year, if you don't count Daphne by Josh Malerman, which is officially not young adult, but I'm calling it young adult. But this is definitely the favorite of the ones I've read thus far. It probably has to do with the fact that it's so intricately tied to the horror genre. And I mean, if you're a horror reader and you're looking for like extreme horror, this isn't it. But if you're looking for a little bit of lighter horror, or if you have a young reader in your life who's reading young adult novels, so you want to kind of introduce the horror genre, this is probably a good starting point. I mean, it has all those young adult tropes, but it actually has an interesting plot. It has interesting devices within it, and it does have lots of ties to the horror genre. We're talking bone shards. We're talking alternate dimensions with creatures from the alternate dimensions. We're talking like evil spirits. We're talking straight out possessions. We're talking the whispering dark, voices from the shadows telling you what to do or telling you where to go or trying to, picking away at you. It has all those horror tropes, all within a nice little young adult package. I would say, I mean, you have skulls on the flowers, the little orchids of the original cover. But I almost wish that this was the trade cover because this is awesome. That looks great. And tell me, you walk into a bookstore and you're seeing that, you're like, I kind of want to read more of that, judging a book by its cover. It was enjoyable. So, yeah, seriously, check out Kelly Andrews' The Whispering Dark. It's a fun read. Like I said, I mean, it is a young adult, but it's not too childish. I mean, it does have those tropes, but it's It's a good read. I do have plenty of other unboxing videos on the channel where I unbox a whole bunch of different genres, not particularly young adult, but a lot of, you know, big boy horror, if you will. I have at least one book review a week. I've been doing 2 the past few weeks. So please consider liking and subscribing if you want to check out more of those. Happy New Year to you guys. Like I said, this final book review, final video even, of 2023. And we'll see you right around the corner in 2024.